Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here with us for Networking at Noon for June. Today, we will be doing a deep dive into marketing and media industry insights. Joining us are Adrianne Torea, Miss Madeline Ulrich from Communique, Todd Mallinson from Vizella Media, and Mr. Dominick Recckio from the Tompkins County Director of Communications. We want to give a huge shout out to our series sponsors, One Step Coaching, CFCU Community Credit Union, Hilton Garden Inn, Sharaba Walker, and Sheldrake Point. At any point today during Networking at Noon, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box. We will definitely have time for some Q&A at the end. And leading us today on our panel discussion is the Tompkins Chamber President, Ms. Jennifer Tavares. And without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer. Thank you all for being here if you are joining in on Zoom. And thank you for any of you that will be watching this later on the recording on the Chamber's website. Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks to all of you for being here, and thanks to our panelists and of course our sponsors. We couldn't do this without all of your support. Glad that we could circle back to this topic. This was actually, we had planned on digging a little deeper into this topic a couple months ago. And of course, the context of our discussions for almost everything have shifted. And I know we've all been working really hard to shift everything we do and how we do it. So it's good to be able to still take an industry and topic-based approach to some of those discussions with this Networking at Noon program. So we're going to go through each of the panelists and have them tell us just a little bit more about themselves, their background, and also their company. So I'm actually going to start with Adrianne and Maddie, and let you ladies go first.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Adrianne. I'm the content marketing manager at Communique Design Marketing. I've been there for about a year now, a little over a year. And I specialize mostly in social media and digital marketing.
And I'm Maddie. I've also been at Communique for about a year, and I'm the communications manager, and I specialize in public relations. And Communique is a full-service marketing agency that was founded by Lori Lynn about 30 years ago.
Thank you very much. Next, we will go to Todd Mallinson from Vizella Media.
Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate the invite. This is probably what seems to be my 200th webinar in the last 3 or 4 months, but this is the first opportunity I've had to share some of my insights, so I appreciate the opportunity. Vizella Media is a company that I own, partnership with my wife. We've been in Ithaca for 23 years and operated the company for about 12 of those years. Some of you may be familiar with ESPN Radio, Ithaca, and Tompkins Weekly. Those are our 2 advertising platforms. And we have most recently gotten into digital with a new branch that we're launching, Vizella Digital. Sort of on that point, I think a lot of us are sort of evaluating strengths and weaknesses, and it was something that we've been talking about for some time, and the opportunity with COVID impacting our operation no differently than most others, even though we're essential, has given us some time to sort of double down on some areas. So, thank you.
Okay, Todd, you're all set. Sorry, believe it or not, your mic is still a little bit choppy. And I know you got a new one, so I'm sorry.
I did. I picked it up last night and tested it, so I apologized.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news on that. But
it sounds really clear just now, Todd. So it may be the lean back of the chair that does it. You got to be back and back.
And then we have Dominick Recckio, whom I'm sure probably all of you know.
Yeah, lots of familiar faces.
Yeah. So Dominick, tell us about your new place of employment and new role and all that.
Yeah, so hi everybody, Dominick Recckio. I'm the communications director for Tompkins County. It's the county government. I've been here for just about 3 months, started right at the height of the COVID-19 crisis. And had previously worked at the Chamber for just over 3 years, almost 3.5 years. which were great, and learned a lot there that's informed my work here. The county government, here we have 27 different departments across all different types of things, everything from public health, which has obviously been very visible now, all the way to Board of Elections, the Sheriff's Department, Bureau of Weights and Measures, and I could go on. I'm still learning about all of them. So there's a lot of different areas that our communications oversee and touch.
Great. All right. Thanks for all that, everyone. So we have a couple of questions, and then we do want to save some time for Q&A. So each of you can choose, how deeply you want to go into each of these questions. The first one is, how would, there's a lot that different businesses and organizations need to be thinking about right now. Obviously, the last several months, there's been a real sort of push and pull between needs for internal communications and supporting our teams through everything that's going on, and also consumer-facing messaging or business-to-business messaging, if that's what your focus area is. So how should a business or organization prioritize and sort of juggle all of their internal and external communications and marketing efforts during a time like this? And specifically, just as we keep moving forward, this is getting even more and more complex, right? We were dealing with a public health crisis. We all knew that early on. And then it became more and more clear that it was going to be a deep and prolonged economic crisis. And now we have to the forefront of our community and our national conversation, racial justice issues. And I could probably go on, there's probably more, but looking at all of that, that's a lot for businesses and organizations, especially if they don't have the expertise in-house to be navigating. So if you could each share some thoughts and advice that you would give folks, given everything that I just said. And I am going to start with Communique again.
So we put together some tips on communicating internally and externally, and they are a bit more geared towards COVID, but I'll share what we have. So we would recommend touching base with your staff on a consistent basis and ensuring that everyone's on the same page, because your staff and employees are really your first line of communication and speaking for your brand and what they're doing. We also recommend being transparent and collecting concerns and thoughts from your staff about how they're feeling. And retaining your workforce is crucial. So talking to your sphere of influence and trusted advisors on how to do this is important. And just staying healthy, keeping a positive attitude, and leading by example.
And I think that first one is like across the board on everything that's going on right now, like touching base with your staff and how they're feeling. And then externally, we have some more tips. Responding quickly and develop two-way communication with the media. Make sure your message, any message you put out there, is simple and stick to it. Speak with one voice and be consistent. Be open and allow high availability to the media, and express sympathy to those affected by the virus or any of the issues going on right now. I found it interesting that I just read a study that a lot of the radio ads that were addressing COVID and frontline workers and things like that had really high rates of receival by the public. So it's good to touch on what's going on right now.
You're muted, Jennifer.
Sorry. Thank you for all that. Todd, why don't we go over to you now?
Sure. I think recognizing that this is a fluid situation. When I started the break early March, and for us on the radio side in sports, it was around the 15th, 16th, 17th, things really changed. And while we would love to have a message, as Adrianne said, sort of stick to it, and I agree with that in most marketing principles, there's a fluidity to it, and you need to adjust. And we all heard over and over again, we're all in this together, the new normal and all of that. And as things sort of evolve, consumers are looking for sort of different language. I think I was on a Zoom call earlier in the week and just reading a lot that we've all had the opportunity to do that. Is as humans, we don't like uncertainty. And we're all faced with that in our lives. right now, personal and professional. And I think getting an assessment from staff and having an open line individually with each one and collectively, we run a lot more sort of Zoom virtual calls. We've been back together for the most part, I'd say the last 3+ weeks. And that has been, for us, I think more normal because you can walk by someone's office, mask on, and have a little bit of dialogue you normally wouldn't have picking up the phone or having a list of things to do. So there's a little bit of normality there. And that seems to be working for us. In terms of our customers, outreach with them, some are very receptive and others are, at arm's length, just not. And that's hard to understand where they're at in the process because we're trying to engage and help and just see if they need some brainstorming or where they're at. So everybody's a bit different. We've been in the essential business right from the get-go. And that's been a blessing and a curse. And I say that in all respect to businesses that are not essential and are just getting underway. I know several of you that are on the call that are been faced with that. So everybody's faced with things a bit differently.
Thanks, Todd. We'll move over to Dominick now.
Yeah, I'll just go shortly and build on some of what's been said. But one of the things that COVID-19 has encouraged us to all do is be patient. And it's really hard to tell your customers or your staff to be patient. But the thing that I've found throughout all of this, communicating internally and externally, is that it's really important to tell people when they will next hear from you. I think the governor was really successful with his daily briefings because he told you that he was going to be communicating with you again tomorrow. And that reduced the fear and the stress by people. And so we've been doing that internally here at the county. We hold weekly town halls for our 700 staff members on Fridays. And we tell them that they're going to hear from us planning for that town hall on Monday. And then they're going to hear from us every Friday, moving forward. And community town halls, we've been doing the same. We're taking this week off. But I think just telling people when they will hear from you next has been a really, really good reminder and lesson in this. And I think that goes into the racial inequity crisis too, because people are looking for organizations to respond to that. And the response can't just be a plan or we will work on this in the future. Putting dates to things is critical so people can have solid expectations of your communications.
Thanks, Dominick. I'm going to mix up which order you go in next time just to keep everyone on their toes. So the next question is to focus a little more deeply on communicating with customers and clients right now, and maybe with some particular attention to just recognizing that, everyone at every level in almost every type of business or organization is experiencing some kind of revenue or budgetary impact due to what's going on, COVID-19 and the economic impacts of that. So, if someone's dealing with an even more constrained budget than they were before, I know I've seen so many businesses over the years that just already shortchange what should be their marketing and advertising budgets, or should be money that they're investing in communicating with their customers. And I think it's one of the expense lines that is more easily flexed than others, unfortunately, right? It's not rent, it's not utilities, it's not payroll. So what are some creative ways that people can use social media, email marketing, or other resources to their advantage right now? Or what would you advise people to be thinking about if they did want to maximize whatever budget they do have to be communicating with their customers? How should they best invest that, those precious dollars? And why don't I start with Todd? And you can't say radio as the first answer. Just kidding.
I think it's a mix. It's definitely a media mix in today's day and age. And I think there are certain businesses that have a customer base that has a greater affinity to certain platforms, whether they're social and digital or more, the traditional mediums. And based on your infrastructure, your resources internally, and who your partners are, I think has a great influence as to what your messaging can be. And I mentioned earlier, sort of taking an assessment of what your strengths and weaknesses are right now. In terms of messaging, as I mentioned, things are fluid. We are reevaluating email communication with our customers right now and taking approaches where it's more survey. What are they interested in? What do they want to hear from us? And newsletter seems right now, it could be a good form of communication, but what do they want to get into that email? I have just recently spent a lot of time looking at my email and getting a bunch of email that is no longer relevant or never was relevant. And I've been doing a lot of unsubscribing just so I can get more focused on the content that I want to reach. So by surveying, I think we're going to hit the mark better. As we're into phase 3 and seeing what phase 3 means after the first week, we're getting more ready and prepared to have dialogue with customers that are feeling a little bit more certain about things and getting the first week, 2, 3, 4 weeks under their belt and feeling more confident about what that messaging is going to be and what platforms they're going to use.
Thanks, Todd. And Dominick.
Yeah, I think, I'll speak more to the message than the medium or the investment specifically. I think what we saw a lot through, at least at the beginning of COVID-19, is people communicating things that weren't core to their brand. And then they had to do a lot in response to this and got farther away from the services or products that they offered and more just how are we responding to this crisis? And I think if they lost some of those parts of what their true brand identity was, that's going to be, you're going to have to go back into that rather than letting it sort of flow through the whole thing. And from the county's perspective, we have a tagline that we use that's inclusion through diversity. And it's not like diversity and inclusion weren't a part of the COVID-19 crisis, because we all know that it impacted, people of color around the world, more seriously. It's considering how do you take those things that are core to your brand and not lose them when a crisis sort of comes up and pulls you away from it. I think a lot of brands that we all got all those emails at the beginning of it is we're all in this together from all these brands. Well, that might not have necessarily been their messaging beforehand, but now it's their messaging here. It didn't feel as authentic. So I think it's an opportunity to just assess the authenticity of the message. And your employees work for you because they care about the work that they do. They might be, they're experts in that field, and don't let the crisis take you too far away from the thing that you love to do.
Thanks, Dominick. Adrianne and Maddie, what are your thoughts on this one?
So yeah, we'll turn away from messaging more and go for more of the medium. We've had clients with interesting ways of communicating in general in their businesses that have really constantly changing information that really needs to get out. So we've dealt with text alert programs, and promoting that. And that's kind of reaching a different base that's not always checking Facebook and websites to get up-to-date information. So that was an interesting approach that some of our clients took. And then just upping your digital presence on social media is crucial. There's so much you can do for free on social media, just engaging your customers, asking questions, and just keeping yourself relevant as a thought leader and putting out as much content as you can. Great time to blog, because that has like a domino effect and can help build your SEO, which helps people find your website. And if you have time to do that, it's a really good time to do that. So,
and I would just say, if you are going to have a presence in the digital sphere, to have all of your information be consistent, make sure you're updating your hours of operation on your website and social media, just in case anybody's trying to find your information. It doesn't cause any confusion.
Yeah, especially with so many, businesses with limited hours, or there's just so much confusion with all these phases and, reopening and consumers not knowing what's open or who's available, et cetera. making sure that you have consistent information in all those places is certainly more important than ever, right? You don't want to ever lose a customer or a revenue opportunity, especially right now. So that's really good advice. So the next was, we asked everyone to think of some great examples of consumer-facing statements or campaigns that they've seen recently in the last few months. We were thinking like focusing on a local campaign and maybe a national company or one of each. There's been some really interesting examples out there that I've seen, you know, as a consumer and also just in my role at the chamber. So I was interested to hear everyone's perspective on that. So this time I'm going to start with Dominick. You go first.
One of the ones I was thinking of was a short example is Monks rebranding to Monks on the Go. I see Ryan's on the call, but that was a really quick and swift response to it. And you took the things that you do well and offered them in a new way. So I wanted to shout that one out. But another thing, I've been thinking about this question since you sent it, and it's not so much a campaign or a concerted effort necessarily, but Cayuga Medical Center, you know, I think we all see them as a hospital, or at least we have in the past really seen them as a hospital. They have absolutely capitalized on this opportunity to be seen as a health system. They were working toward that messaging beforehand, but now, I mean, they're referring to themselves actively as Cayuga Health System in a way that I just hadn't heard before, and I think they're doing it in their community messaging and with that rebranding. And so, you know, while the crisis has a lot of, you know, negative impact on things, I think a positive impact is that they've been able to show the community just how wide of a service provider they are and just how great it is to have a, you know, community, you know, local independent hospital in that way, but also as a wider health system. So I think that's been happening kind of behind the scenes, but it is going to have a long-term impact. And I think they've leveraged this crisis to build on that well.
Those are great examples. Thank you, Dominick. Todd, you can go next.
Well, to that point, Cayuga Health was my example. And I think John and company have done a great job. And I think they've taken a lot of organic content and morphed that in all of their platforms, social, digital, and terrestrial. And obviously it's a very sensitive subject because they're in the epicenter of what's been involved. But I think they've certainly been hurt financially with everybody retracting from normal health medical visits and whatnot. But I think that much like regular retail is coming back. But I think they did an amazing job of being proactive and taking advantage of all resources that they partner with. So great observation, Dominick.
Great. And then Adrianne and Maddie.
So we think that Frito-Lay, the snack company, did an interesting ad. They took kind of an interesting, innovative approach to the situation, and they used their platform to put a spotlight on the people affected, and they made it more about the people and more personable than about the brand. So we thought that was just a really interesting approach. And we also think that the Ithaca Tompkins International Airport has done a really great job, and Adrianne's going to talk about that.
Yes, we're a little biased because they are a client of ours, but since, you know, obviously air travel is going to be one of the hardest hit sectors, and it's going to take a while for it to bounce back and for it to build consumer confidence again. So it's been quite a challenge to get the correct messaging out. But it started with PSAs, just constant blogs, social media, web updates, and most recently, and I'm going to share my screen, we did a recovery banner that all customers, passengers see as soon as they enter the terminal, and then all employees are also wearing these buttons. I don't know if I'm able to share my screen. Oh, never mind. Yep.
I was getting worried we didn't have it enabled.
I know.
Like,
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
So this is the banner that you'll now see when you enter the airport, front and center, above the ticketing counters. And then all of the employees, like I said, are wearing a button with that recovery one step at a time, because this, now more than ever, even though we're reopening, it's going to be all about what people are comfortable with, and you don't want to like forcefully, you know, with your advertising, you want to just be very mindful that it's what people are comfortable with. We're not forcing you to fly, you know. But we're all in this together, as we've said all along. It'll be a slow process, especially for air travel, and we've tried to keep that in mind. And then these are in the works, but I will quickly share a campaign that we're really excited about. And this is a mock-up, but can everyone see it? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we've already begun to gather real stories on social media of people that have had to travel essentially during the crisis to reconnect with families that they're separated from, for whatever the reason. So that's engaging on social media, and then we're gonna actually put those into this campaign so that it's really personal and it's real. So it's not out there yet. We can't tell you that it's gonna be successful, but we're pretty excited about it. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. And it is great to see some examples. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to, let's see, there we go. Now I can see everyone again. I think that shifting in messaging and making consumers feel comfortable is really important. And actually, it's a good time to just mention, I think overall, there's been some efforts in the community in this regard to communicate expectations and retrain consumer behavior, retrain workforce expectations and behavior, and to clearly help everyone understand what we all expect and need to do from a public health perspective to continue to manage the spread of COVID-19, to safely begin spending more money at more places around our community. Dominick and the county, I know you probably weren't maybe going to bring this up, but Dominick has created some great imagery and some posters that we've really been trying to encourage most of our businesses that are open to be downloading or printing or getting and then hanging in their places of business as well. Again, just focusing on mask wearing, hand hygiene, social distancing, what everyone needs to be doing to protect each other. There's also, you've created a poster for businesses that have actually gone ahead and certified at the state that they're following all the guidelines that they're supposed to so that they can display those. You know, so obviously that's not advanced marketing, that's not an advertising spend, that's not really a top of mind awareness type campaign. That's really like right in people's faces when they move about the community, telling them what they should be doing and really helping reassure consumers that they can safely do these things, that this business is a safe place to be, and that they have a part to play in that too. And I think that's really important for all of us to communicate and to support right now.
Yeah, the framework that I was just going to add that the framework that we operate under our, we have a public information officer team at the county, and we're lucky because we have the health department, which is a very credible, organization that is in charge of sharing the message. But what we do is we look at things through three lenses. Like our communications either have to be critical public information that's going out that people need. To Jennifer's point, it would be encouraging positive behavior. Or the third point would be inspiring or reassuring people that if they do the right thing, things will be okay. And so those are the messages that we look through. Everything we share, we have that lens that we apply through. And if it doesn't do one of those three things, we bring it back to the chopping block and look at it again.
Great, thanks, Dominick. We have enough time. So before we get to our last official question, I actually just wanted to offer if anyone else in the session has anything that they've seen out there or any particular advertising campaigns that spoke to you or, great messaging that you've received and, in the last few months that you would want to share with everyone else, just feel free to jump in and share some of those examples, or you can also put them in the chat box. No pressure. People have nothing at the top of mind, that's okay. Or even if there's any dialogue on ways that you've been trying to address some of these issues at your organizations too, we certainly can have time for some sharing.
Well, yeah, I'd like to share. It's very interesting you guys talk about this, because I remember a couple months ago when we first started seeing all these national commercials talking about COVID-19. Some of them were just really kind of funny to watch, because it is like, our country's going through an unprecedented time. We'll get through this together. Come buy some tires. It really felt opportunistic for some companies, but there are a lot of companies that are trying to do it well, that like you said, keep it on message with their company. So it is nice to see those. I'm having trouble thinking of one that I really like right now, but
no, you're absolutely right. And then the antithesis of that was, which Todd alluded to earlier, was the huge volume of completely tone deaf emails that weren't acknowledging what was going on at all. And they were trying to sell you stuff, or like just people not realizing that, all this crazy stuff is happening and everyone is having to reconfigure their entire work life and their work scope, et cetera, and manage this crisis. And they're just sending things just like they normally would. Like maybe they already had it programmed to go. And I have to hope that that's what happened in some of those instances. So does anyone else have anything that they want to share? Devin?
Yeah, I was just thinking of one that I enjoyed. This kind of a more comical route, but Arby's has some really funny commercials, and they're more like acknowledging. They have one, and actually I just went and found a link. I can put in the chat if people want to check it out. But it's pretty much like they have one sandwich that they're advertising, and then they have another sandwich that's like blurred out, and they're like, because Arby's couldn't film a new commercial right now, so we're reusing an old one. And it's just kind of a funny way of like acknowledging it, and like, we're saying something about it, but we're not going to be like, we're all in this together in this time of need, have an Arby's sandwich. So it's just kind of another route that I found funny.
I am going to check that out.
I thought of one. Devin reminded me of one. I received this. It was a commercial. I think it was either for DoorDash or Grubhub, and it was saying that the world needs you to stay on your couch right now. So the whole commercial was just a guy laying sideways on his couch, ordering food on his phone. And at one point, the whole couch tips up, so he's still laying on the couch, but he's upright. And then like triumphant music plays, and he puts his hand on his heart. It's made staying home and being lazy look patriotic. I thought that was funny and very of the moment, and pretty well done commercial.
I think there's one thing that hasn't been brought up, and it has to do with Marcus and Vizella Media, which reminded me, and we had to shift our entire Scholar Athlete Award Night of Champions, which is normally an in-person thing with hundreds of people. And so we had to seek a new partnership, and that was with Vizella Media, to help us find a way to put on an important community event when we knew we couldn't be in person. And so, reached out to Marcus, and it was really this fun, exciting new partnership. It allowed us to do some different things that we don't normally do, bring in some national ESPN voices. So there's interesting opportunities too that have come out of this. And I think interesting ways we're rethinking how we work. And I think partnerships is key to that.
Yeah, to Steve's point, I think partnerships and really assessing feedback from staff, and we've got a pretty small staff to begin with, but really tapping into people's thought process and melding those ideas, and hats off Marcus to your company. You did a fantastic job for us, taking a challenging situation and enabling us to put it on a first quality product. So
Great. I did watch a lot of that program as well. It was very well done. I'm sure all those athletes appreciated that they still got their recognition. So thanks for doing that. So the last question, and then we can certainly do some more Q&A and have some more dialogue, is to sort of take a look back and a look forward and think about, you know, the marketing and media industry and PR industry sector, and think about where things were a few months ago before COVID, pre-COVID, and look out maybe a year, maybe a couple years down the road, and share some of the things that you're hopeful about, things that you see as opportunities and innovations, and what excites you most about your industry. And frankly, even in the context of all of the things that are changing right now and the things that we're learning and that we might do differently as well. You know, where are things going, and what has you excited and hopeful about it? I'm going to go back to starting with Adrianne and Maddie.
So we think that the communication sector is something that we're very excited about, and the spotlight has been on that all throughout this because it's been more critical than ever to get information everywhere to everyone. And it's been really impressive to see that it's been very successful, and that pretty much all of America is on the same page with guidelines and this and that. And then I think just, this is a little different, but what's excited me is how creative we've gotten with virtual events and things like that. Like the creativity, especially in this community, has really blown me away. Like, you know, virtual runs and things like that. An example I guess I should have brought up, well, it wasn't a campaign, but in the last question was, I don't know if anyone saw what Homegrown did, the shoe store on the Commons. I thought that was amazing, and he was the first to ever do anything like that. And basically he had these really coveted sneakers that you could be in a raffle for, and you could boost your entry by $5 or $10 as many times as you wanted, and all that money went to GIAC. And they raised like, was it $50,000 for GIAC by people just wanting these sneakers, and you could just boost your entry so you'd get a higher chance of getting the sneakers. And just innovation like that and creativity like that, and that was obviously all a virtual thing, is something that is really exciting to me. And I think we'll see a lot more of that down the road.
And I completely agree with Adrianne. I think the communications industry has played such a vital role throughout the pandemic and everything else we're facing. And it's been really incredible to see the engagement, and especially in the digital sphere, being able to reach so many people with our messages and communicating vital information to them. So I'm not really sure how it's going to change in the next year, but I just think that the role it's played has been really amazing.
Great, thank you for that. I'll go to Dominick next.
Yeah, this is 3 months into working for a government, which is very different in a lot of ways, and I'm still learning a lot of those things. But I think the eyes are on us at the county and on different governments like they never have been before, and so that raises the expectations, which I think is great. But it also raises the responsibility to do things right. And with that said, I think we've been able to communicate with different parts of the community in entirely new ways. As the industry guidance has come out, or as New York State has said something, the governor might say one sentence in a daily briefing, like summer camps can reopen. There are like dozens of hours of work behind the scenes that are happening, and pulling together those community partners who are doing summer camps to have those conversations. All of those things have been really good behind the scenes. And what I hope is that all of these different areas see the county and see government as a collaborator moving forward, and as an area that can work with people. And so far, I keep telling people here, I'm like, that's my only experience. So that's going to be my expectation of all of us moving forward, is that we are collaborators and do that. And the one other thing I'd add is we have a really robust public input process through COVID-19. We're getting hundreds of questions from people from all different types of backgrounds, whether it's a complaint about some social distancing, or it's a business asking a question about whether they can reopen, or I mean, it really spans the gamut. And so I'm hoping that we can keep that public inquiry process really robust moving forward for, general civic engagement beyond this crisis.
Thanks, Dominic. If nothing else, perhaps a lot more people realize that the county government has a lot of employees. Yes. And they can ask questions in other ways than always yelling at their legislator or emailing them directly.
Yes.
That would probably be a good outcome for some of our elected officials. But so. Yeah, thank you for that. Todd?
Sure. Adaptability and resiliency, I think most businesses here in this area are terrific at it. And obviously, this is probably the biggest challenge that we have faced. Go back to the uncertainty. As humans, we're just not programmed to engage that way. We like predictability, and when will this be over in a year, 6 months, 2 years? And what will it all feel like? I think what I'm most optimistic about is the economy here prior to COVID was pretty solid. And if you look around regionally, Ithaca and Tompkins County has been looked upon very favorably by downstate, and I think by our neighboring counties and economic communities have been, very envious of what we have here. So I am optimistic that we will be through the toughest time. I think, the concern of will this pop up again in the fall? It's there. And we have to be prepared for it and adapt potentially again. Like to bring those things up, but it is real, and I think we have to prepare for it. Go back to on the radio side, we're sports, and to this point, I thought the Major League Baseball Association would have their act together, and we'd be playing baseball by July 4th. Well, that's not going to happen. I do feel a little better about the news that broke yesterday, but they still haven't signed. And to think that we might have a summer without baseball, that's the one sport I expected to be leading the pack. But others have come together, and we will, we'll address that. The other thing that we're facing is what will schools, what will education look like later this year, and how will that impact sports on our coverage, both Tompkins Weekly and on the radio side. And so I think we have to do internal audits on a sort of a rolling basis of what we've got. Stephen mentioned, turning to partners such as WellSaid, which at that level was a new partnership for us. And how do you turn something that is a keystone event for you and put it out there in a level that you have been accustomed to, but in a virtual way. So, I think identifying those partners and resources in our community, and they're here, and if they're not here, people know where to get those resources nearby. So I am truly excited about it. And we've got a great staff, and I think we've been sort of doubling down on some training and self-evaluation of how will we tweak things to move the meter forward once we feel we're going to get some traction.
Thanks, Todd. Those were definitely some great points. And yeah, I'm very hopeful about our recovery as well. And I think we are, we came into all of this and we're well positioned in a lot of places for sure. And we're also finding new vulnerabilities, right? And even as we were talking about our economic opportunities before, I don't think anyone ever envisioned the college students not being here as a scenario or the campus is shutting down as something that might ever happen. So yeah, it's a new world for sure. And it also gives us more incentive than ever to look at how do we diversify our economy and how do we support even more local businesses and keep as much of our spending here as possible and create more partnerships and collaborations. So I want to open it up to any questions that folks have for our panelists here before we move to any other just, sharing that anyone wants to do on these topics or others. But does anyone have any questions for any of the panelists? Gonna go easy on them, huh? Okay, well, that's fine. Does anyone have anything else, topical or thoughts on everything that was just shared that they want to comment on or share with the group?
For me, I think one of the biggest things that's resonated through all of this, and I know that we can kind of like laugh about it and point out some silly ones now, has been that authenticity and being authentic to yourself, authentic to your brand, authentic to the situation that we're facing. Marcus and Devin both brought it up. Like during this time, I do feel some kind of way. I won't say triggered, it's not that bad, but I do feel some type of way when I see an advertisement and they're like, hey, we're with you. We understand now is a really difficult time. And the example you gave, Marcus, was perfect. And it's like, and now's a good time for you to come buy 4 new tires. And I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. There's a disconnect there. And so I do think that recognizing that we are all truly going through a difficult time on a lot of different levels. And I appreciate, Jennifer, that you brought up the fact of recognizing the protests and everything that's going on towards social justice. I do think that in some cases, businesses and organizations that have been able to put together some type of statement or some type of thought or sharing some type of like, we're with you, we stand with you, we support this cause, has been really pivotal and great. But at the same time, I also have some respect for those businesses that I won't say have chosen to not say anything, but have just made a conscious decision not to say the wrong thing during this time. I think that you can kind of shoot yourselves in the foot if you don't have a well-crafted message and stance that you're trying to put out there as a business. So I think sometimes it may not necessarily be even making a formal statement. It could be something as simple as like, our organization donated money to this cause. And I think that that makes a statement in and of itself, as opposed to putting some words out there that you can maybe not take back. And I think that some businesses have had to face some issues with that.
Mm-hmm. And I'd add to that, and I'd say, as there's a lot of people who are leading organizations or in leadership roles on this call, and I think, not saying things you don't believe in, is important. And, and if you want to say something, I think doing the underlying work to understand what it is you should say is critical. So I think we saw that in COVID-19, people were unsure what to say at the beginning, but there was science and there was information to back up a lot of those things in some places, and people really did the work and got out ahead of those things. And now as we see these, crises around, equity and race, it's the same thing. If people, the county here, we put out a strategy around equity and anti-racism. But I think first it required some breaking down of what those terms mean, especially on a leadership level, to make sure that we're coming from a place of authenticity and genuineness.
Yeah, we at Vizella Media, we had multiple team meetings via Zoom, trying to figure out what, if anything, we would say about all the protests and everything going on. And it was all about trying to figure out exactly what is the message we want to get across that is on brand for us, that is speaking to what's going on, but without being too forceful or not forceful enough. It was very hard trying to craft a message for the crazy times we're in. And I think we came up with a good idea that was on brand for us, was just to say, hey, here's some movies that you can watch that'll educate you on the Black experience in America. And we put out a list of documentaries and fiction films and things that people can watch just to get a view. And I think that we talked a lot about what movies should go on that list, putting that list out says about us as a company and things like that. So there's a lot there's so much going to a simple Facebook post. in these times, and it's very important to think about.
And I'll add quickly, like back to the internal communications, like we said, like talking with your staff, talking with your employees and seeing how they feel. And maybe you don't put something publicly, but say, you know, you've made mistakes in the past. Like, I feel like this is such an important time to commit to growth and commit to change. And I've had a lot of respect for businesses that have like put out statements like that, kind of admitting to some things they've done in the past and how they now want to grow, and they're committing to that, because I think that carries a lot of weight, especially now, because people can change their, you know, their views and their practices and things like that based on new information.
Yeah, I just wanted to, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rachel.
It's okay. Sorry, Devin.
Okay.
I just was thinking as I was listening to everybody talk, just to, you know, share my own experience, which was that we did decide we wanted to put something out from RASA. And when I sent it, in my mind, everything made perfect sense. And then once I sent it out and I realized the way something was written, I had to then do like a follow-up email. And although, you know, I have to say, like, of course we would wish that doesn't happen, but I also felt a little bit like something for me that's going on right now is the playing field feels like it's been leveled on some way, right? It's like, I feel like what's happening right now in so many ways is that probably at the end result will be that this is really a good thing, right? And so there was a part of me that just felt like, you know, would I have wished to not have like put things in the way that I did? I mean, for those of you who didn't see the email, in my mind, I knew I was listing a number, not all of, but a number of the folks that had horrible things happen to them, some of them that resulted in their death and some that didn't. But the way it read, it might have read that I was saying everybody died. And so I then needed to send another email out to say, actually, I apologize if that read that way. That was not what I meant. But it felt important for me from where we come from RASA, which is this sense that every individual really matters, that I really wanted to put a name. I wanted to put the names down, you know, and so it was just an interesting process. And just to share that, I think it's important to think through whether you are or aren't putting messages out, but that just was, it was a moment for me where I just had to own it, you know, and just say, okay, and it was with good intent and I get to learn, right? And so I'm learning continuously, or I hope so anyway. And I think too, just to speak to what's happening on the level of the COVID things, you know, for sure all of you could imagine that in a health spa, talking about social distancing is hysterical, right? I mean, it's like, how do you invite people to come in for the service that we offer and then actually fully stand behind we're socially distancing? Like, these things do not go hand in hand. And yet our message, what we're trying to do is talk about, which I think is really important too, is just contact, you know, human contact. So hoping we're following everything that we need to, we're hoping that we do, but it's caused a lot of internal dialogue around, like, how do we do this in a way that is safe for staff and for anybody that comes in our doors, and also really speaks to the human aspect of some of what's been going on. Because, you know, we've been talking a lot about one of the byproducts of this is isolation, and what comes from that for people, and what comes from not having somebody that you can be in close contact with. So I don't know. I mean, certainly the conversations are endless. I think they will just keep going on, but, you know, I'm grateful to be able to have places like this for us to be able to talk it through and just to hear what other people's ideas are. And I took a couple notes down from your thoughts in terms of messaging, and we'll pass it on to my folks too.
Yeah, and Rachel, I want to say, I think that's the story you shared is a good example, and I think it's so important, like, to foster and create a space where you can, like, say something and then realize that it didn't come out the way you wanted it, and, like, expand on it or correct it. And, like, I think a lot of people can get caught up in, like, being afraid to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing. I think that can be a really easy thing to kind of fall into, and I think sometimes it is better to say nothing than to say the wrong thing. But I also think it is so important to have a space and let people see you, like, working through things and learning through things, and then feel like they can be free to do that as well. I think that's how, like, conversations get started, and things like that happen. So thank you. The other thing I was going to say was just going off of like COVID-19 messaging. Like Marcus said, we've had a lot of internal discussions about messaging, about a lot of different things throughout the last few months. And in talking about messaging related to the pandemic, we, early on, we started thinking about like what kind of messaging are we going to put out, and then we started looking at like what other people found. And actually, I had something I wanted to share in the chat real quick. I'm going to share a link if you guys want to check this out. This is called "Every COVID-19 Commercial is Exactly the Same." And it's kind of a funny, but it's like a cut of like all these different, like, those kinds of like, we're all in this together, buy our tires kind of thing. All those like national brands that have like the exact same commercial that's like, in these uncertain times, in these unprecedented times. It's just kind of a super cut. But we found that and we were like, oh, everybody is doing the exact same thing. And when you see enough of that, it kind of loses all meaning. You can only hear like, we're all in this together in these unprecedented times kind of thing so many times before you tune it out and it doesn't really mean anything anymore. So I think that like finding your voice, finding your audience, and figuring out like what's on brand for you, what do people want to hear from your perspective rather than what they're hearing from just everybody in general, I think is so important.
Thanks, everyone. Does anyone else have any final thoughts or last things they want to share? Thanks for all of that great dialogue and those ideas and, willingness to share and willingness to be in a vulnerable place too, with colleagues and peers. I think that's really important. David, back to you. I think my job here is done, and I'm going to pass it back to you.
You did it so well, Jennifer. Each one of these gets better and better. I know this is not your first rodeo, so thank you for hosting today. Thank you to our panelists for being here. Before we get out of here, though, I do have a couple of bottles of Sheldrake, the oh-so elusive Sheldrake Rosé to give away. Sorry, panelists, you guys are not eligible for this, but I will be sure to send you guys some Sheldrake tasting cards. I just talked to Kyle and the team at Sheldrake, and they have reopened up their indoor and outdoor space. They have everything labeled for proper social distancing protocols. I think they have some procedures in place for you to be able to lift your face mask and sip and do the whole 9. So I'll make sure you guys get those. But we do have, I have attendees listed, and I'm gonna do virtual business card pulls. You are your virtual business card today. Your presence is a present. And Jennifer will give me some numbers. And the only rule is you just have to be here to win. We're going to do 2 people winning a bottle each of the Sheldrake Rosé. So Jennifer, I have numbers 1 through 14. Some people have already left, but if you choose a number of someone who's not in the building, we'll just pick someone else.
9.
Number 9. Mr. Marcus Terry.
Nice.
Oh yeah. Somebody
I think everyone should have to do. Everyone should have to do a dance from now on.
All right, Marcus.
Come on, Marcus, ruin it for everybody.
Good job. All right, and we have room for one more winner. Numbers 1 through 14.
Number 3.
Number 3. It's Miss, now I may say your name wrong, so please feel free to correct me. It's Miss Ala Al-Hashimi. Did I say it right?
It's Ala.
Ala
Al-Hashimi. Yeah.
Al-Hashimi. That is much more beautiful than what I had said. Ala Al-Hashimi.
No, that's fine.
The winner of a bottle of Sheldrake Rosé.
Yay.
The chamber office has started our reopen process. So I will be in contact with you guys to talk about how you can pick up your bottles of rosé. So congratulations to both of you. Thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it. Want to again say thank you to our series sponsors, One Step Coaching, CFCU Community Credit Union, the Hilton Garden Inn, Sharaba Walker, and Sheldrake Point. Again, as Jennifer stated earlier, without you guys, this would not be possible, this programming. Thank you again to our panelists, Communique, the county, and to Vizella Media. Thank you guys for being here and your wonderful insights. Thank you for joining us. And we are signing off. You guys stay safe, okay?
Thanks, Jennifer.
Everybody.
Everyone, take care.